Last week saw one of the most shocking single incidents of Israel's war on Gaza. In what's been dubbed the flour massacre, over 100 Palestinians were killed as they tried to acquire flour and food from an aid truck outside Gaza City. This is how the BBC reported the incident at the time.
More than 100 Palestinians have been killed while waiting for food aid in Gaza City. These images are from that attack in the southwest of the city. A journalist told the BBC that Israeli tanks opened fire on a crowd who'd come to collect supplies. A large number of people had been gathered waiting for food when the incident happened. The Israeli military issued these aerial pictures of the incident. It says dozens of Gazans were crushed and trampled as they surrounded the aid trucks. Separately, an Israeli source confirmed its troops had fired after feeling threatened by the crowds near the aid point. Let's have a listen to that statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office.
The trucks were overwhelmed, and the people driving the trucks, which were Gazan civilian drivers, ploughed into the crowds of people, ultimately killing, my understanding is, tens of people.
Now let's have a listen to an account from a Palestinian who was there.
After they stopped shooting, we went back to get our aid. By the time I got flour and some canned goods and took it down from the truck, they shot at us. They shot me and the truck driver left and ran over my leg. I lost my nerves. If you want to get us aid this way, then you might as well not bring anything.
So in that clip, you heard a number of different accounts of what happened. At the start, we were told that a Palestinian journalist had told the BBC that Israeli tanks had fired on the crowd. We then heard the Israelis say that most people were killed in either a stampede or by Gazan truck drivers panicking. So the spokesperson said the latter. A source to the BBC had said the former. A Palestinian then says that Israeli troops were shooting people in the crowd. So what really happened? Which account is closest to the truth? Well, you won't be surprised to know the IDF claimed to have carried out an investigation which exonerates their soldiers. This was their spokesperson speaking on Sunday.
The IDF has concluded an initial review of the unfortunate incident where Gazan civilians were trampled to death and injured as they charged to the aid convoy. Our initial review has confirmed that no strike was carried out by the IDF towards the aid convoy. The majority of Palestinians were killed or injured as a result of the stampede. From the information we gathered from the commanders and forces on the ground, our initial review has indicated that following the warning shots fired to disperse the stampede and after our forces had started retreating, several looters approached our forces and posed an immediate threat to them. According to the initial review, the soldiers responded towards several individuals.
So he said no Israeli strike was carried out, so presumably that would exclude an airstrike or tank fire. He repeated the line that most people were killed in a stampede, and he said, "We did shoot some, quote, looters, but it was only in self-defense." Now, parts of that account just sound completely implausible to me, right? It's unclear why looters, so you're a looter, you're going there because you want some food, why would you then approach heavily armed IDF soldiers, right? If you're desperately trying to grab flour, would you do a detour and decide to start a fight with the IDF, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? I don't buy that for one moment. The question is harder to make a sort of snap judgment without seeing the evidence about is whether most people were killed by gunfire or by a stampede. You can't come to a conclusion off the top of your head on that. We know that the Israelis have been very happy to kill civilians en masse, but we also know that due to Israel's genocidal war, Palestinians in Gaza are literally starving, right? There are thought to be 300,000 people without sufficient food or water living in northern Gaza. So it wouldn't be a surprise if the distribution of food aid could become dangerously chaotic. And on that question, BBC Verify has now released this report. What video and eyewitness accounts tell us about Gazans killed around aid convoy? Now, in terms of eyewitness accounts, the key ones were this from a journalist who was on the scene. Israelis purposefully fired at the men. They were trying to get near the trucks that had the flour. They were fired at directly and prevented people to come near those killed. They also spoke to a doctor at the nearby Al-Auda hospital who told them this. Al-Auda hospital received around 176 injured people. 142 of these cases are bullet injuries, and the rest are from the stampede and broken limbs in the upper and lower body parts. The BBC report didn't suggest the hospital had provided visual evidence of this claim, but the Euromed Human Rights Monitor has published a separate report which references a doctor at the separate Al-Shifa hospital. So in that report, they write this. Dr. Jabala Al-Shafi, head of the nursing department, stated that they observed dozens of dead and injured upon their arrival to Al-Shifa hospital, hit by Israeli gunfire. The doctor also emphasized that all relevant documentation, including x-rays and medical reports, is accessible to the media, human rights groups, or investigative committees. Now, if the hospital follows through on that offer to share all relevant evidence, it would be a huge contrast with Israel's approach. And we know that they have footage of the event because they released some of it. This is some of the infrared drone footage released by the IDF to show crowds surrounding aid trucks. It was released as an attempt to show the IDF were blameless, but the BBC say the video the IDF released was not one single sequence, but had instead been edited into 4 sections. They say that BBC Verify has asked the IDF for the complete footage of the incident, but so far it has not been forthcoming, right? So we know this footage exists because we've seen part of it, but the IDF hasn't handed over all the footage in an unedited fashion, so it's completely impossible for any journalistic outlet to actually verify what happened. So the evidence is there, but they won't hand it over. Take from that what you will, right?